You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you.
Ooh.
Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
And welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy. Every single episode, I'm Michael O'Neill here in sunny Long Beach, California, joined by one Mircea Murariu there in Aspen, Colorado. What's up, dude?
Hello, my friend. How are you feeling?
I'm good, man.
Awesome.
I'm feeling good. Back on the court, played a couple times recently, as rusty as you'd expect. Thankfully, pickleball rust isn't like golf rust. I don't know if you've played a lot of golf. If you take like a week off of going to the driving range and putting and stuff, you just become really bad at golf again. So thankfully, pickleball has a little more leeway in that regard. But I definitely felt like my timing was weird. But I'm really enjoying my Carbon True Foam 4, which I've been playing with now 3 or 4 times, and I really dig it.
Yeah, you told me about it. I'm looking forward to trying it.
So, quick update on the Texas camp. We've now, Mircea, we have 21 names on our waiting list for the Texas camp. We take effectively 24 people. One comment I want to make on it is that it'll be in Dallas. That'll be the area that we'll be in, most likely. That's kind of who we're talking to right now. So for those of you in I've gotten at least 3 or 4 hey, you guys coming to Texarkana or Abilene? I'm like, probably not. We're going to probably go to a major metropolitan area. Houston certainly has rang in, but chances are you guys will probably have to jump on a plane because we are going to probably be in the Dallas area. So if you'd like to get on the waiting list or the list itself for the camp, for when we announce it to the world, and you can actually go buy tickets to it. You can find me at picklehelp.com. Just tell me your name and where you are and that you'd like to be on that list. And as soon as we get it together, we'll send it off to you.
Yeah, we want to make sure we give everyone a great experience. So one of the things we're focusing on, like we did at the Fort, even though we had the chance for rain, that we had covered courts available there, which was awesome. And so we're going to try to do the same thing in Texas, get some indoor courts so people don't have to spend money and worry about it getting rained out or shortened.
Right on. So Mircea, we have a little bit of a grab bag today of what we're going to chat about, but we're going to focus primarily on returns, which we've done before. But they're experiencing an interesting evolution in pickleball. But before we do that, I'm going to put you on the spot, as I want to do. Obviously, you're based in Boca. There's a ton of high-level open pros in that area, many of which you get to play with all the time. You obviously play a lot with JW in Georgia and train them. I'm curious, though, now that you've been in Aspen for whatever it is, month or 2, and you've been playing with more normal level rec players, if there's anything or any ideas that you had going into it that have shifted, has any of your mindset, just because you've done so much coaching, has any of it shifted now that you see that cross-section of pickleball versus the one you were normally used to?
Actually, I think it's really crystallized and confirmed my primary thoughts about pickleball, which that the fundamentals are just so key. The footwork, the balance, not running through the balls. I can't even tell you how many relatively lower and higher level players start missing or frequently miss when they are moving through the ball. And it might not even be with respect to footwork. Like they may get to the ball and stop with their feet, and then they lift up their body, or, they lift up their head or their shoulder. They move through the ball in some other way, and they try to kind of do something with balls that they shouldn't and just miss. And I just think that just makes such a huge difference in terms of consistency and quality of play that it's just incredible. And the more I see it at different levels, the more convinced I am that it's just incredibly important, especially at the lower levels and when you're first starting out. And I think we mentioned this before, but it's not just for the balance and stability of hitting the shot and having it go where you want it to go, but it's really to prevent injuries. Because I really think the vast majority of injuries that are discussed in pickleball are really due to people's poor footwork and relative lack of balance. If you walk out to a random public park and watch people play, they're just turning all over the place. They don't have a wide base. They're running through balls. They're unsteady. And that's when you fall and break something or injure something. And that's where you get the injuries. It's just confirmed my emphasis on the fundamentals.
And it's usually the first thing that breaks down when we get tired. The footwork, which is why we end up making the mistakes. We're late to the ball. We're late to the spot. We're off balance by the time we get there. Certainly over the age of 50, you're slower than you were when you were 22, and you could make up for your deficiencies with speed and agility and being late, but still being able to get to the spot. But when you get older, it makes it so much more important that you have that stability when you're hitting the ball. If you guys want to just see this, the next time you're at rec play, I want you to focus on one single thing when you're not playing. So you're sitting on the side, you're taking a game off. I want you to see the errors that are made and determine why they were made. And I will tell you that 95% of the time, it's because the person was off balance hitting the ball. They were either running through the shot, or they were on one leg, or they were doing something weird, and they weren't fully stabilized when they hit the ball. I guess the good news, though, Mircea, is that it's the biggest bang for the buck when you're like a 3-5 to 4-5 player, is if you only focused on that, your game would improve dramatically.
Yeah, and dude, I'm talking even 4-5, 5-0 plus players. If they really emphasize that aspect of their game, they're going to improve their games tremendously. It's really shocking if you pay attention and watch carefully enough. And it's been interesting out here with, at times, 2-0 to 3-0 to 4-0 level players. When I point it out and I have one person watching with me as we're analyzing or talking and watching the other players, it really just opens their eyes tremendously, and they start to realize it, and it's really helpful.
We were talking a bit offline, and you guys have probably experienced this as well. You get a really closely, hotly contested match. The games are really close, or you have like one game that's back and forth. It's 11-11, 12-12, 13-13. Almost every single time, those matches end on a missed return for whatever reason. Like, you've had all of these unreal battles and all of these highlight moments, and somebody serves and somebody drills it into the net or hits a long ball, and that's it. And you go, God, that was anticlimactic. We'd like a nice walk-off Ernie or lacing a shot down the line, but the fact that I just battled this hard and put it right into the net is a real bummer.
So how about we talk about some basics about returning the ball?
One of the first things I see, certainly in that 3-0 plus range, I guess you could do it probably 0 to 4.5, is that people tend to stand too close to the baseline when they are returning. If anybody ever played softball or baseball or anything and you were in the outfield, you know how much easier it is to be running forward to catch a fly ball than it is to try to grab one behind you. So if they give you, a fence or a tennis net that's 6 to 8 feet behind you, put your bum on it. Get as far back as you can. Now, there are exceptions to this. You're playing somebody that's a beginner and barely crossing over the kitchen line with their serves. Don't do that. But in general, if you're playing with, let's say, normal serving, where it could be deep, it could be mid or whatever, get your buns all the way back as far as you can, because you want to get up to the kitchen anyway on that return. It's so much easier to have your entire momentum moving forward. And people get caught a lot, Mircea, on these returns where they're right up on the line and then someone happens to have a really good deep serve, And then that's it, because their return, either if they even get it over, is going to be so short that it's going to be pulverized as soon as it crosses the net.
We always kind of tie it back to these couple things, but you're just bringing up court positioning and footwork. One of the things that I always like to think about is being on the balls of my feet, trying to feel the balls of my feet right before I return. I do this in rec games, and I double down on it in high-level matches, in tournament competitive matches, especially when it's really close, because that's really when it's the most important. You brought up a great point. Position yourself properly, where if someone is serving in a particular fashion, like if they have a really good cross-court serve on the right from the forehand to your forehand, you have to position yourself maybe a little bit closer to the sideline. But if they have a really solid, hard or deep serve, you obviously don't want to half volley that or short hop that by standing at the baseline. And you also don't want to have someone push you back so your momentum is going backward. You always want to be either neutral or forward in terms of your torso when you are hitting the ball. Your point is great, back up to a reasonable distance. It could be 6 to 7, maybe a little bit more feet behind the baseline, particularly if someone has a really hard serve. And then you are able to adjust by starting the point off with thinking about being on the balls of your feet.
You'd be amazed how much more the ball slows down once it bounces. So if you're really close to that baseline, it still feels really quick. But if you're a couple feet behind it, a few feet behind it, it slows down significantly in that amount of time.
Yep.
So you have plenty of time to get under the ball. One thing I think that's evolved in the last couple of years, Mircea, is that it used to be taught that your returns should be a slice of some sort. And then probably 2 years ago, people realized that if somebody gave them a really good slice ball, the paddle technology had come up so much that you could use that same backspin that's coming at you as topspin as you returned the ball. And this just happened to me a week or two ago, where a guy just had a super aggressive, he was a tennis dude, super aggressive slice return. I was on the left. He kept putting it kind of in the middle of the court with just gobs of spin on it. And I just kept going, praise Jeebus, thank you so much, and just annihilating that ball because it just kept dipping. I was firing it right through the uprights, through the middle of the court, because that's where he was returning it. And I could quite literally hit it as hard as I could with topspin, and it dipped 4 feet in because of all the spin the dude was giving me. So I happen to know how to deal with that and really get under that ball. But if you have like a really good penetrating slice return that's deep, it's a super difficult thing to handle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I typically slice my backhand returns, and it's been interesting, especially up here when the ball travels a little bit faster at altitude. When I get a nice solid contact, which I try to do on the majority of my returns, when I get a nice solid contact, people often try to take it on the rise, and they inevitably dump it in the net over and over and over again. So if I get a good penetrating slice, it's incredibly effective. Now, if your slice is going to hang up a little bit, then it's going to be quite troublesome for you and your partner. But the more important thing, I think, is placement. When I think about returns, I think number one, about my core positioning and footwork, and number two, I try to pick a target. So when you're thinking about targets for returns, Michael, where are you thinking?
Well, I was going to say, to add to your most important thing other than footwork is depth. Depth is typically more important than almost anything else, is getting it back as far as the baseline as you can. And then I have a couple of choices. And this is one of the places I think we can introduce a sound amount of strategy in the pickleball game. One of my regular crew, one of the guy is an animal. When he attacks, he's a big dude, and it doesn't matter if he's right or left. When he's free to roam, he poaches left and right. He's got a super powerful ball. He plays with it. He plays with your paddle, which is a very powerful paddle. And it's difficult to handle him. So we always return to him. We just say, let's return. And in fact, if we can get it to his backhand, even better. But we definitely return to him, and we neutralize his ability to be off ball and prowling on the court like a panther. So that's kind of one of the first things, is we've identified that his strength is being a poacher, especially on shake and bakes. So now we return to him. We don't allow him to come up and be that disruptive, chaos-inducing guy.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV Insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Right. So you've correctly identified one of the ways to think about targets for returns. Often you want to start off returning to the person that you think might be a little bit weaker in terms of how they're hitting their thirds. But even if they can hit a good drive and their partner is poaching, that's something that you want to neutralize. In terms of targets, at least for me at the beginning, I always think of middle. So if I'm returning from the right, I'm often just aiming for the middle. And since I'm hitting it at somewhat of an angle or a diagonal, I am often targeting the left foot or the backhand of the player that's serving. So it'd be the right side player if I'm returning on the right. It's the same target for me on the left. So I will target the backhand or the left foot of the player on the right when I'm returning for the left. Even if I target a particular person, I always just aim for that middle. So I'm using that middle like 60 to 70% of the court. I'm not aiming for the sidelines. And I do want a deep return, but I'm also not aiming for the baseline. I'm aiming for 3 to 4 feet inside the court. It really helps your partner to tell them where you're returning, or if you're the non-returning player, ask or perhaps tell your partner where you'd like them to return, because that helps you anticipate where you want to take that fourth shot. Your responsibilities as the non-returning partner are, number one, to help your partner get up, and number two, to put pressure on the other team. So for example, if you have your partner returning from the right side and you tell them, hey, return up the middle or return to the left side player, that way once the return happens, you can kind of scooch over to the middle and you can, number one, narrow the lane that your partner has to come up. So you're basically kind of cutting off a portion of where the opponents can return down the middle, so they have less room, even if you don't take the ball. And if you are able to take the ball in the middle, you're taking it earlier than your partner because your partner is typically behind you, and you put a little bit of pressure on the other team. Now, if your partner is returning from the right and they return all the way across court, you have to shift a little bit more to the left, and you can't cover the middle as well. These are the things that you can think about, and it's really helpful to communicate with your partner right before they're about to return where they're going to return.
Yeah, what you said at the middle, I think if you're a 3-0, 3-5 type player, 4-0, literally if all you did from this one show is returned to the left foot of the right side player, it would be magical. It really changes everything. It's a very difficult spot, especially when you've got, let's say, a rec partnership or a new partnership on the other side, because it really gets right in the way. The person that's actually the ball's heading towards, that right side player, they either have to move to the right to hit a backhand or back all the way up to hit a forehand.
Yep.
Or their teammate who's playing on the left has to step kind of right in front of them to take that ball. From a communication standpoint, it can be a big challenge. And then to fish the ball out, if someone says if it's too late and that communication came a little later than you want it with a relatively deep return, now you've got to fish this ball out from your left foot. And it's not an easy shot by any means. It's a very difficult shot, and you'll probably get a duck heading back in for your third. So I think it's a really great thing. If it's all you took from this is let me just return to that one spot. I did want to mention that guy that I just spoke about was kind of a known quantity. We've played with him a bunch. We just know, let's just return the other way. Mm-hmm. I did get a chance to play with a new group, totally new area. We faced a team where there was a guy on that side that was surgical. His returns were so good and so different. He was a real tennis dude who could just drop it and dink. I mean, he was really, really good. He was a 5-0 plus type player. Had incredible shots. And I noticed the pattern, and I said, hey, when we go to this guy, we've lost almost every point. We just lost 4 points in a row because we returned to him. But when we return to the other guy, we get in the point, and we've won now 3 of the 4. So let's not hit to that guy anymore. He's too good. And this is kind of where we had that discussion a few episodes ago where not everybody is like super comfortable with strategic talk, and they just don't communicate like we all would want them to. Being 4-0 to Pro listeners, we we wish they would all be like, cool, it sounds good. But the point is that it became very apparent that one guy was really, really hurting us, and the other guy, we were in the game. So just pay attention to those things as you go.
No, absolutely. And, you brought back the point that I mentioned earlier, what's hurting you. You don't have to have a 5-minute discussion about it. All you have to say is like, hey, I just noticed that when we return to Joe, we've lost the last 4 points. Let's try returning to Stan. It's literally that simple. I can't tell you how many times I was coaching there on the sidelines of pro level matches, and I just see the same thing happening over and over. When they would return to one person, they lose 3, 4, or 5 in a row. And then once we talk about it, maybe in a timeout, we change it up. You have to keep in mind, though, also, even if you have a specific strategy, you have to evaluate that on an ongoing basis, which is really what you're saying as well. You were saying about returning to the stronger player or maybe the more mobile player that's putting more pressure on your fourth shots, so they're taking those fifths and poaching them. Hypothetically, let's say you start returning to that guy, but that guy gets hot and is just drilling third shot drives for winners. Then you have to mix it up and return to the other player. And you will notice this at the higher levels as well. When you have a person that is generally weaker in terms of making mistakes on thirds, you give them enough balls and they get into a groove and they start hitting good drives or good drops, whatever it might be, or even both. So you have to recognize that that is a change and you need to react to that. I really like to mix up the returns, even if I have a specific target, maybe 2 or 3 to the person that you're targeting. And if you keep winning, obviously just keep doing the same thing. You make them beat you, if you will. So if I've hit you 5 balls in a row and you've missed every one, then I'm going to hit you every ball until that changes. If you notice that someone is getting into a groove, change it up. Try it to the other player. Like I said, I usually hit 3 or 4 to the person that I'm targeting, and then maybe 1 or 2 to the other player.
So return-wise then, Mircea, when you're in standard rec play, or you've just gotten a new group there in Aspen, you're going to start with that hopefully deep towards that right side player's left foot. That's going to be kind of your starting point. What makes you start evolving, or what kind of trickiness do you ever do on a return that might be a little abnormal?
Well, I don't even consider this as trickiness. It's basically using the fact that you have to let the ball bounce. So one of the things you can do is hit a higher, lofty return. The harder you hit it, even though you want in theory, a hard, deep return, sometimes that's not effective enough, especially if you need to switch. What you can do is hit that higher, loftier return, sort of like a half lob, if you will, or even if you want to do a lob, hit a lob return. Your opponents have to let it bounce, so it allows you more time to get up to the kitchen. And if you are struggling with mobility, a lob or half lob return, looping return, is really a great option. Another thing in terms of the trickiness is to mix it up a little bit. Hit a slice return, hit a topspin return, hit a off-pace return, hit a harder return. If you have opponents that are tennis-style players, they like those balls in their sweet spot, and often hitting those traditional line drive type returns might be perfect for your opponents. These are all different things that you can do. Another way is just varying the location of the return. So even if you're returning cross court and you're targeting the left foot or backhand of the right side player and you're returning on the right side, maybe you want to go a little bit more out wide, or maybe you want to go to, the person directly in front of you. These are all different things that you can do. I do want to bring up something, Michael, that, I want to say evolved a little bit in terms of my thinking process and my technique due to some specific circumstances over the last several months, one of which has been playing in some venues that have relatively short areas behind the baseline, so you don't have as much room. And you combine that with the newer paddles that can generate a lot of pace, and players are getting better. They hit harder serves, and also being out here in the altitude. And what I've noticed is that when people completely run through their returns, they tend to hit the ball out, and they tend not to hit the sweet spot, particularly at the somewhat lower levels. And then the other thing is the backswing and the follow-through. So I've limited my returns to minimize my backswing if my opponent is hitting really hard serves, or if I am challenged in terms of the distance that I have to be able to run forward if it's a short area behind me, or if I'm here in altitude. because the biggest issues people have out here when they first get out here is returning and serving. The ball just flies. I've really used the combination of limiting my backswing, not running through my returns, as a couple ways to really improve my consistency. So if someone is bombing serves, don't take a giant backswing and don't run through it. Use their velocity to help you control the return and to keep it in, particularly if you've noticed that you've hit, 3 or 4 out, or you're shanking the returns. So get to your spot, hit it, limit your backswing, follow through the direction that you want the ball to go, and then you move up.
Well, thank you, first of all, for answering my how have you evolved since you've been there question 25 minutes later. Appreciate that. That is very sound advice. One thing that sort of add to that a little bit is that you see a lot, especially if someone's facing a really hard server. It reminds me a bit of what we used to do in tennis, where in tennis, I would sort of be kind of moving around a little bit, but then as they were about to strike the ball, I would plant and split step and get ready to move in left to right because it comes so fast, right? A great serve. It's almost like a soccer goalie. You got to kind of make a choice and go in a direction. But I would do that, and I still do that a bit in pickleball when I know I'm facing someone who's got some heat. I was going to ask you this. Describe where you run after you've returned the ball. So you've now just swung. The ball is heading back to the opponents. What's the direction you're running in?
That's a great question. And
I know it is. That's why I had it ready for you, buddy.
I know. Thanks for teeing it up for me, my friend. This brings up one of the most basic fundamental concepts of pickleball is follow the ball. You do the same thing in tennis. Let's do the same thing in pickleball. Let's follow the ball. If I'm returning cross court and I'm on the right, I'm following the ball in a diagonal towards that middle. Just like if I'm dropping or driving my third shot, if I go cross court from the right side and I'm going to the other right side, I'm not going straight ahead. I'm actually following that ball towards the middle in that diagonal plane. So,
and to step in really quick, I'm not going to interrupt your whole thing. Your partner who's already waiting up front will clog the middle until your arrival. So you're running towards the middle, and as soon as you get there, they're going to go back to their regular spot, right?
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
And I need to give them the opportunity to do that, so I would be basically returning more towards the middle rather than the outside. So if I'm returning way cross court, my partner has to also follow the ball. They can't really clog up the middle as well as they can if I'm returning straight down the line or kind of straight middle, if you will.
You'll know if somebody has tennis shots, and if you moving away from the line leaves it vulnerable, because tennis players shoot for lines more than pickleball players do, I think, down the line.
Yep.
So it might leave that a little bit more vulnerable in that respect.
Yeah, and after you return, you want to do the same thing that you do on your other shots as your opponent is about to hit the ball. You want to split step, stop, get a stable base. I would rather have you get halfway up the transition zone, stop and be stable, rather than 3/4 of the way up through the transition zone, be running through the ball and, shank a ball or hit a ball that's going 50 feet out because you can't make that decision regarding whether the ball's going in or out as you're running through the ball. So I think it's more important to get that stability. I think that's more important than the extra real estate that you might be getting, the extra few feet. I don't think is worth the loss of stability.
Yeah, the penalty you pay is way too high for that. Before we wrap it, one other spot that I really like to return, especially if I'm playing on the left and they've just served me maybe a middle type ball where I get a forehand, I love going back to that back corner of the left side player, so their backhand if I can. The only caveat to that is if you happen to be playing jack sock or somebody that has a murderous forehand that can step and walk around it and then fire it right down the line because they've got a really good alley there. But otherwise, I like that spot. Like that corner pocket is a tough one to dig out of. So think about left foot of the left side player, but it's a higher margin of error. You got to really make sure you hit it and don't hit it wide.
Well, I mean, you can do that when you're returning on the left, hit it cross court. And I think before we wrap it up, I think we should maybe talk about where you target your returns when you're switching. So when you're unstacking. So why don't you tell me your thoughts about that, Michael?
I feel like that's evolved a little bit too. I think when we first started the show, the common idea was to go down the line, and that would cut the angles of your return off for your partner. But it left it vulnerable for what I just said. If somebody was able to run around that ball, they could fire it right down that line. Again, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I tend to return middle a little more now when I switch in order to help prevent those angles. That's what I do. I still kind of try to target that right side player's left foot if possible.
No, I think that's a great place to start, returning middle. And if you get a little bit more loft on your return, you have a little bit more time. If I'm returning from the right side, and the most common example is mixed, or if you're playing with a lefty, you really want to switch the majority of the time. So let's say I'm on the right side. I will target that spot that we discussed earlier, which is the left foot of the right side player. So I kind of put that in the middle. So if the left side player wants to come over, they're kind of bunched together, so that limits their angles a little bit. And then since they're pinched together, that opens up the angles a little bit more. It makes their court positioning suboptimal. So that's one spot. Another spot I like often is just going from the right side, doing a little bit of a loft return straight ahead, because it's often to the backhand of the male player, which is usually a little bit of a weakness. Again, it depends on the player. Some players obviously have a really good cross-court backhand, so you want to avoid that. So it depends on the skill level of your opponents. From the left side, I often like my mixed partner when she's on the left side and wants to get to the right side. I often actually like her to return cross-court, like a deep cross-court to the male player's backhand, because it's the longer distance. And if he needs to run around his forehand and wants to drill it, it's still going in a linear fashion or straight in front of me, so I can still clog up that middle. If my female partner returns straight ahead and the opponent female partner is on the right and they have a really good cross-court forehand, then the ball is going away from me and away from my partner as she's switching. That's why often straight ahead or up the line when you're on the left side and trying to get to the right side makes it somewhat difficult if someone has a really good cross-court forehand.
Interesting. It's two different choices depending on where you are. It makes sense. Typically, the backhands aren't as powerful as the forehands. Certainly at a certain level, they certainly get there. But yeah, that makes tons of sense.
It just comes down to identifying the strengths and weaknesses of your opponents and try to target them, but target them, keeping in mind your own skills set and also using targets to maintain your consistency. Even if you're targeting the backhand of the left side player, you're not targeting within a foot of the sideline. You want to make it cutting out the 10% of the sidelines out of your repertoire. So you're targeting the middle, like 70 to 80% of that court to maintain that consistency.
Yeah, I love that. All right, guys, so if you have a takeaway from this episode, if you are just getting into the strategy of returns, go ahead and target that right side player's left foot, and you'll probably make some hay out of that. Move back as far as you can, so you're running forward as you return, and high, deep, and down the middle is never a bad thing. You'll have plenty of time to get to where you got to go. Anything for you, Mircea?
Yeah, the biggest things are focus on your footwork and court positioning before. Pick a target to make the return easier for you and your partner and communicate that target. But also, as you're running forward, stop and don't run completely through the ball, especially if you are making errors on your return or if they have a really hard serve.
Lastly, I will say, work on this. That's the other piece of advice, is actually work on your returns. Too many games end with them. So work on them, get them dialed the way you like it, and all will be well in the world. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mircea.
Thank you, Michael.
Folks, you've now just listened to another episode of 4.0 to Pro. If you need to reach out for the Texas camp, it's picklehelp.com. If you'd like one of the brand spanking new carbon True Foam 4s, it's at crbnpickleball.com. You can use the promo code 402P at checkout for 10% off. And for Mircea and Michael, you guys keep on rocking. Have a swell day.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.